Good morning, and welcome to day 2 of New Jersey's first ever Trails and Greenways Summit. My name is Elise Bremer-Nei, and I'm the Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator at the New Jersey Department of Transportation. Once again, I would like to thank NJDEP and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for partnering to bring this and the other panel sessions to you. Before we get started, I just want to note this session is being recorded, and after the summit, the recordings of this and all the other sessions will be made available online. So this is the first of 3 panel sessions today, titled Mapping New Jersey's Trails, a first for New Jersey. In this session, you will hear about DEP's groundbreaking initiative to map all the trails in New Jersey. You'll also learn how this effort will aid search and rescue efforts in the state, how you can use available resources to get your trails mapped, and how the final product will promote equitable access while benefiting trail planners and users alike. I hope you can join us for all of the sessions today. And with that, I will now turn it over to our moderator, Diaz.
Thanks, Elise. Hello, everyone. I'm Diaz, New York and New Jersey coordinator at the East Coast Greenway Alliance. The East Coast Greenway is a walking and biking route stretching 3,000 miles from Maine to Florida, connecting our nation's most populated corridor. Many trails within New Jersey overlap or intersect with the East Coast Greenway. We have a mapping tool on our website, map.greenway.org, which allows people to plan their travel route along the Greenway. This first session will begin with presentations by Brandee Chapman from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and Tanya Nolte from the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, followed by Shawn, Megill, Legendre from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, and Caum from New Jersey State Parks. We will have a short Q&A after the panelist presentations with questions submitted by attendees during registration and during the session through the Q&A function. I hope you enjoy this panel and join us for other sessions today and tomorrow. I will now turn it over to Brandee.
Thanks, Lewis, for that introduction. Brandee's going to pull up our slideshow, and there it is. Thanks, Brandee. So good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. My name is Tanya Nolte, and I am the GIS manager at New Jersey Conservation Foundation. I'm excited that Brandee and I are here today to talk about the imminent release of a statewide trails data set. So I'm going to hand it straight over to Brandee to get us started.
Thanks, Tanya. My name is Brandee Chapman. I'm State Trails Coordinator with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and I'm so excited to talk to you about the forthcoming New Jersey statewide Trails Geodatabase. First of all, I don't want to assume that everyone here knows what a GIS database or a geodatabase is. So GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and a data layer is one component of a GIS. A GIS data layer includes both the visual depiction of data, so in the context of our discussion today, that's the trail that you would see on a paper map or on your device screen, as well as information or data about the trails that you see depicted, which typically lives in a table format in the background of a GIS. So what are we doing exactly and why? Well, a major component of initiating this project is that a statewide trails geodatabase was one of the primary goals of the New Jersey Trails Plan. For those who don't know, the New Jersey Trails Plan serves as a guide for those who plan, build, operate, and maintain New Jersey's trails. An excerpt from the 2009 New Jersey Trails Plan update describes the need for statewide trail data, saying, complete, convenient, and accessible trails information is essential to guide the public in using trails and decision makers in assessing facility needs and priorities. This visionary style plan also talks about how a comprehensive trails inventory would provide the public with readily available information about the location, type, length, accessibility, and the uses associated with each trail. You can view the full plan or an executive summary of it on the New Jersey Trails Program website linked here, and it will also be provided as a handout after this session. So why else do we need this? Well, there is no authoritative central location for the public to access trail locations online. Some independently owned websites offer this information, but it's often crowdsourced and therefore may not be accurate. All trails. A statewide trails geodatabase would provide the general public, landowners, land managers, and first responders a reliable place to look for this information. Users of the data will be able to see where trails are in relation to their area of interest, and they can also utilize trail data to plan hiking trips and create routes. In short, accomplishing this goal of the New Jersey Trails Plan is exciting news for trail planners, builders, and users alike. There are many ways in which this project will prove to be a benefit for New Jersey. Not only can data be used for planning new trails and advocating for their use, but it can also be used for search and rescue. First responders historically needed and will now be able to use a reliable data set to find lost hikers. Benefits also include using the data as a statewide trail planning tool to improve New Jersey's trail network. It will help trail planners and the New Jersey Trails Council identify areas of focus for New Jersey, like creating a top 10 trail priorities list. It will also advance the other goals of the New Jersey Trails Plan, which include to have a trail within 10 minutes of every resident and to create non-motorized connection to neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, and public destinations. This geodatabase will also help identify and prioritize acquisitions for major trail gaps to create a statewide network of trails and greenways, which is currently happening on a regional level. A comprehensive geodatabase of all trails in the state will complement and aid the growth of the existing regional networks you see pictured here and discussed in one of yesterday's sessions. And if you missed that session, I recommend watching the recording. So now that you know some of the benefits of the data set, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya to talk about how the creation of this data set started and what it includes.
Thanks, Brandee. So as a GIS specialist, I've been active in the New Jersey GIS community for about 20 years. And for as long as I can remember, the community's been talking about the need for a statewide trails layer. And given the increase in trail mapping that we've been seeing in recent years, we wanted to find a way to leverage all of that good work. So the GIS community decided to form a trails task force, charged with the mission of developing a methodology for creating and maintaining a data set of trails statewide. The work of the task force was predicated on the idea of gathering existing data from a wide range of data providers and then compiling it into one geodatabase of statewide trails. Brandee and I serve as task force co-chairs, and this slide gives you a bit of an idea of who has participated with us over the years. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There are just way too many of us to name, but it is representative of the range of folks who've contributed. Most are GIS professionals with experience in trail mapping or who have been active in the New Jersey trail community. Next, I want to briefly talk about the work of the task force, and then I'll move on to talk about what's going to be included in the first data release. So the first task we tackled was research, because we wanted to learn from and apply lessons learned by others who've already done this work. We reached out to GIS professionals in other states to learn about their trail programs. So we asked about data collection strategies, funding, budgets and staffing, editing and updating strategies, as well as challenges that had been faced. Next, our definitions and attributes team discussed the current status of trail mapping in New Jersey and made recommendations both about the types of trails to be included in a New Jersey data set, as well as recommendations about trail attributes that would be included. We then moved on to planning a methodology for compiling many data sets into one, which involved working through some technical GIS challenges, while also trying to determine who in the GIS community might have the capacity and resources to take on this work. And it was sometime during this point in the process that Brandee was able to secure federal recreational trails program funding. And so the task force was able to move from the conceptual planning stage right into implementation, which was very exciting. We got to work on outreach and data gathering and hired a GIS contractor through the state's GIS services contract to do the work of data compilation. So let's take a look now at what's going to be included in version 1.0 of the dataset. The first thing to know, and which I've already mentioned probably more than once, is that we're compiling trail data which has been submitted to us for inclusion in a statewide data set. And importantly, that data is coming to us from known and trusted GIS sources who typically are mapping trails their agency either owns and or manages, and so have an interest in collecting and representing trail data accurately and in keeping it maintained and updated as trail features change. We chose very deliberately to not include crowdsourced data, at least not yet anyway, because we have zero capacity to verify whether data submitted is accurate, and because crowdsourced data is much more liable to be inaccurate. So, for example, the general public might unknowingly hike a trail that officially has been closed, or even be walking and tracking data on private property. In terms of anticipated data coverage, we've received data from approximately 25 agencies out of more than 60 that we reached out to over the summer of 2020. And if you take a look at the map shown here, the counties in dark green are areas where we anticipate having both state and county-wide trail data, with some also likely having local trail data as well. And there are just a few counties shown here in light yellow where we anticipate having just very limited trail data. The data set will include existing trails only. So the definitions team talked at length about whether to include planned and proposed trails. And in the end, we elected not to, because the changing status of that information makes it more liable to being out of date or inaccurate. If resources allow, we do hope to include proposed trails in future data releases. Next, I want to walk you through the types of trails we hope to see included. And our goal is to allow as much room as possible for a wide range of trails, including walking and hiking trails, bike trails, both mountain bike and road bike trails, equestrian trails, various winter activity trails, and water trails. We also elected to include off-road vehicle trails, provided they've been officially designated as such, as well as sections of trails on a road, if those sections serve as links between off-road trails. Of course, whether we end up seeing all of these types included in the first iteration of the data set is going to be dependent on whether data providers have actually been mapping them to date. And at the very least, we hope this list will provide some inspiration for data providers to perhaps widen their mapping programs if and as they're able. In terms of the attributes about trails to be included, our goal is to include and capture the following where applicable, and again, if provided. The first is trail name, and this will include both the name of a trail segment, as well as a regional trail name if a segment happens to be part of a longer distance trail, such as the Circuit Trail or the Appalachian Trail. We're also including blaze color and or blaze description, the name of the agency that manages a particular trail, designated and approved trail uses, such as walking or canoeing, as I just outlined, and this information will be helpful in identifying multi-use trails. The distance of a trail segment to be calculated in GIS in both feet and miles, whether a trail surface is paved or unpaved, the name of the park in which a trail is located, if a trail is ADA compliant, and then finally, we also want to record information such as who supplied us with the data and how they mapped their trails and when, all of which will give users some understanding about data accuracy and the date of last update. We do have a data schema where these attributes are described in more detail and which will be available as a handout for this session. So next, I want to quickly note a few caveats to be aware of in relation to the data itself. The first is that since we're gathering data from trusted providers, we're compiling that data as is, meaning there will be no checks to verify data accuracy or completeness. It's possible, for example, that a data provider might have included proposed trails as part of their data submission. If so, they will end up in the final data set. Only very minor editing will be done to source data, say where line work does not meet up at obvious trail intersections, and there will be zero editing made to attribute information. In cases where a trail segment is submitted by more than one data provider, our methodology for choosing which source to include is to select the source that has the most complete set of attributes. A result of using this strategy is that it's quite possible that trails within any given park or region may be sourced from different data providers, resulting in differing topology or attribute completeness across any one or many trails. Also note, we will not be cross-pollinating attributes from one data source into another. Next, as I've already alluded to, this first version of the data set is likely to be incomplete. We fully anticipate there will be some trails missing from the data set because there are going to be trails either not yet mapped by a trusted source or where we just haven't found the trusted source yet. How much of this there's going to be is hard to predict, and we'll be hoping for some feedback from users once the geodatabase is released, so we can get a handle on this and try to plan for filling in gaps. In addition, since we don't expect data providers to have already been capturing all of the attributes we're looking for, we also anticipate a fair amount of incomplete attribute information in this first release. We do hope this new geodatabase and data schema will help to standardize data capture and be a template to help guide future trail mapping efforts and be an impetus for filling in attribute gaps. And my last caution is that this first iteration of the data set should not be considered to be a representation of every trail across the state, and specific details about any trails that are mapped should always be verified for accuracy directly with the managing agency. With all that being said, we're very excited to release this first iteration because it's the start of building a long-term, comprehensive and accurate trails geodatabase, which will be improved and expanded across future updates. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Brandee to go over our publication timeline.
Thanks, Tanya. So now you know all about it, but what is the current status? Data is being compiled as we speak and is expected to finish up very soon. After an internal review process, we're excited to announce that we will have an anticipated release of the first iteration of the geodatabase in November 2021. The first goal is to have the New Jersey statewide trails available for download on the New Jersey Office of GIS and the NJDEP open data web pages. And down the line, we would also like the data to be available on GeoHub, GeoWeb, and ArcGIS online. So now you know what it is, why we did it, how it started, and when it's coming. So now we're going to talk about some of the short and long-term goals for the data set. Tanya?
Okay, so thanks, Brandee. Our most pressing short-term goal is to organize our process for maintaining and updating the data set. Our plan is to provide regular updates, including updates to existing data, as well as sourcing new additional data and data providers. We'll be creating a clear and easy process, which we'll communicate to our data providers early next year. And it will be managed by staff at NJDEP together with task force volunteers.
And one of the first short-term goals on our radar is to have a process in place to have the data updated on an annual basis. We're aiming to have new data published in time for National Trails Day every year, which is the first weekend in June. So it's a date that's easily memorable and users can anticipate new data to be published around the same time every year.
Our longer term goals centre around improving the data set in a few ways. First, we hope to facilitate a process to close those anticipated data gaps I mentioned earlier, including trails not yet mapped, as well as gaps to attribute information. We hope to encourage data providers to standardise their mapping methods and data capture, and perhaps to even expand their trail mapping programs. There's potential to widen the scope of the data set, perhaps by incorporating proposed trails, as I mentioned earlier, or by capturing new and additional trail attributes. And we're also exploring an exciting opportunity to possibly partner with state police and local search and rescue teams who are already out there GPSing trails and collecting data, and who naturally have a vested interest in accurate and up-to-date trail information. So we're looking into ways to collaborate and share resources in the hope of continuing to develop and improve the statewide data set.
Another use for this geodatabase, and a long-term goal for it, is to use it to promote environmental justice initiatives. This can be done by using the statewide Trails Geodatabase in concert with the DEP's Office of Environmental Justice's GIS layer to target funding and planning efforts for trail and greenway development in our overburdened communities. Yet another long-term goal is to use the statewide trails data to identify potential safety upgrades where trails intersect with local roads. Replicating current efforts underway by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, the Safety Subcommittee of the New Jersey Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Council is exploring ways to coordinate a statewide effort to make a point layer of trail road crossings using OpenStreet's base layer in ArcGIS. Supplementing this data with bidirectional photos showing current crossing conditions will allow improvement efforts to be strategically prioritized. And last, but certainly not least, another long-term goal is to have an ArcGIS online web application for public use in the future, similar to the Missouri Trails web app pictured here. And although apps are fun and everything is digital nowadays, it's important to note that apps will never replace the value and reliability of paper maps or guides produced by trail managing agencies. This app should only be used for planning trips and is not intended for on-the-ground orienteering. You should always take a trail map with you.
So with that, we want to say thank you very much for your time and attention. We'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone who's been involved in the task force. It's been a team effort getting us to this point. I'd like to also thank everybody who has submitted data, and I'd like to request that everyone please help us get the word out about this data set, so we can be as inclusive as possible and build an accurate data set we can all be confident in. If you have data or know of others who do, please be in touch. And if you plan on mapping trail data, please consider using the schema as a template so your data can be easily integrated into the statewide data set.
We hope you're excited about this geodatabase like we are. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. And again, feel free to contact us with any questions using the information listed here. And with all that being said, we're going to turn it right over to Shawn.
Thanks, Tanya and Brandee. I'm going to pull up my slideshow here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Shawn Megill Legendre. I use he and him pronouns, and today I'm situated in the historic Lenape lands of the Delaware Valley. I'm manager of DVRPC's Regional Trails Program, The Regional Trails Program provides funding, technical assistance, and coordination to trail developers across Greater Philadelphia. Today, I'm going to talk about a handful of mapping tools that DVRPC uses to track progress on trail development in our region. Before I get into that, a little bit about DVRPC, or the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. DVRPC is the MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization, for Greater Philadelphia. In New Jersey, we serve Burlington, Camden, Gloucester, and Mercer counties, and all their constituent municipalities, including the cities of Trenton and Camden. Our board is composed of representatives of the full 9 counties that we cover, the cities, several state agencies, and the governor. Our staff of about 110 planners, GIS specialists, technical experts, and support staff develop planning tools, conduct planning studies, and administer grant programs. We maintain a travel demand model for the region, develop a long-range plan, and produce regional transportation improvement programs for our respective state subregions. Trails have long been a part of DVRPC's vision for Greater Philadelphia. Today, we support trail development in several ways. We provide funding, technical assistance, and coordination, and we gather and share data. The circuit trails are Greater Philadelphia's regional multi-use trail network. Much like the interstate highway system for cars, these are the major trunks of a regional active transportation system. Envisioned to eventually provide 800+ miles of interconnected off-road hard surface trails, the network today stands at a bit over 355. How do we track progress? Well, through one of our mapping apps. DVRPC maintains a detailed shapefile of all planned alignments, segments, and their respective status. We work with our partners across the region to continuously update the shapefile and resulting map, both available on our website. For ease of use, the status of each segment is assigned to one of 4 tiers. Existing, this includes all existing trail segments shown in green on the map. In progress includes all trail segments currently in design or under construction. Those are shown as orange. A category we call pipeline, these are segments that are somewhere in the trail development pipeline. Feasibility studies may be underway or complete. There's generally a group or groups sponsoring some form of work to advance the segment from concept toward design and construction. And finally, we have listed plan segments. Those are in the blue on the map. These are alignments that have been identified as having potential, but more work needs to be done. Using this map and the data behind it, we can provide status updates to our trail partners and track progress toward overall goals. The map can also be used for planning purposes to determine which projects are underway and likely to be delivered soon. Zooming in on the Mount Holly, Pemberton, Arnie's Mount area, you can see trail segments at all status levels. We can also get an aerial view of the landscape. This can help make more clear major features and physical impediments. And lastly, you can turn off segments by status. This can help you better visualize only those segments that exist, and perhaps only those coming soon. For any existing segment, clicking on the individual segment will provide some attribute information like surface type, length, and whether it belongs to one of the national trail networks, such as the 9/11 National Memorial Trail or the East Coast Greenway. Next, I want to share another mapping tool that we're working on. Knowing that there are many trails beyond the Circuit Trails network, we were asked by our counties to undertake a comprehensive regional all trails inventory. We are in the late stages of this inventory and the development of a web viewer. During this process, much like the statewide inventory that Tanya and Brandee talked about, we solicited data from our planning partners, scoured open data portals, but we also meticulously verified each segment using up-to-date aerial imagery, park and trail maps, street view, and other tools. And I can't be thankful enough to the intern that we had working on this, for about 2 years, who meticulously went through all the segments that were submitted. This web viewer will begin with only New Jersey trails represented, but we will add data from our Pennsylvania counties throughout the remainder of this calendar year and next. This trail layer and viewer also includes all trails, not just multi-use or shared use paths. So therefore it includes hiking only, equestrian, and other single-use trails. Unlike the circuit trails map, but like the statewide inventory, this map only shows existing trails. And we've done our best to reflect the surface types of each trail segment. Like the Circuit Trails web map, this is meant to be a planning tool, not a navigational map. We include extensive disclaimers about this on our website. Like the Circuit Trails map, you can zoom in on a particular area and toggle on and off aerial imagery. We'll continue to crowdsource and update the shapefile map as new data becomes available and as our time permits. So where can you find these tools? Well, on DVRPC's website. I've provided some direct URLs there. In essence, you have both a web maps page that you can access that shows all web maps that DVRPC has produced, including the circuit trails. That's where the comprehensive regional trails inventory map will also live once it's live, and it is coming soon. And then DVRPC also maintains a spatial data catalog where you can find all of our data, whether it's in a web map or not. It's all available there, including the shape files that drive these two web maps. So that's all for me today. I'm sure there'll be questions down the road, but I'm going to turn things over to Doug right now.
Good morning. Again, my name is Doug Caum, and I'm a Parks Program Specialist with DEP. Been in this position since about 2016. And we heard a little while ago from Brandee and Tanya about the statewide effort to have a trails database. And I'm specifically going to speak about the State Park Service's efforts, which in many ways are parallel. Underlying goal, though, being to enhance the quality of trail data and to share it in usable forms such as maps, brochures, and online tools. We do all love our maps, I agree. Next slide there. Thanks, Sam. So for many years, most state parks and forests had maps with more of an artistic interpretation of trails. These were based on a combination of real data and simple drawn forms. While these were a reasonable depiction of a park, its infrastructure and trails, it was not always 100% accurate. So this is an example of a trail map for Delaware State Park, as you can see, from 1996. Next slide, Sam. So fast forward 10 years, the overall presentation had improved, a little bit better coloration and a legend, but the map image was roughly the same quality and accuracy. Next slide. All right, so about 10 years ago, with the long-term goal of creating accurate, attractive, and user-friendly trail maps for every New Jersey state park and forest, park staff began GPSing official trails in all parks, forests, and recreation areas. First, DEP acquired a number of handheld GPS units, and we engaged a number of trail data collectors on the trails. This included New Jersey DEP GIS professionals, on-the-ground park staff, seasonal employees and volunteers, some interns. I myself can attest to the completeness of the data, as I think in my first 3 years with DEP, I probably walked about 97% of all miles of trails in every park and forest. So, but most staff who were engaged in data collection had experience with Trimble units or were trained by experienced individuals. In addition, like others have said, we leaned on some nonprofit and county agencies to share their data, such as Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the New Jersey Off-Road Biking Association, Hunterdon and Burlington counties, New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, etc. So as a result, between the efforts of Green Acres, Bureau of GIS, and Parks GIS staff, We work cooperatively to create a comprehensive database of park-related and forest-related data. Over the course of multiple years, we now have data on over 1,000 miles of trail and 3,000 points of interest. And these would be things such as a parking area, a fishing location, a trailhead, camping, etc. Next slide. Thank you. Since I was showing earlier examples of Delaware State Park, this is the current version. In 2013, the State Park Service began developing a prototype for its trails map and used Delaware State Park as a sample. Once the design features and attributes were established, they were utilized to create these maps for other parks as other parks data became available. The design attributes for all the maps included trails, points of interest, roads, park boundaries, contour and hillside shadings, which is a great addition, natural areas, and more. As each new trail map became finalized, it was posted on each park's website, and with the help of funding from the National Rec Trails program, trail brochures were created and printed as well. So in addition to the map, a trails brochure, as you can see here for Delaware, includes a description of the trails, including the length, difficulty, trailblazer color, and some features of the trail, such as natural or cultural history. To date, there have been 28 trail brochures printed, and they're available at each park, in adjacent regional parks, and online on each park's page. Next slide. Here's an example of the Belle Plaine State Forest brochure. One side of the 11 by 17 brochure has a map. So it's a pretty large scale map. And the other includes easy to use trail information. The inset image in the lower left is the legend with the trail name, color, and length. The other inset image is of the short trail description that is included on the other side of each brochure. The brochures are book and tri-folded, so they fit well into a standard brochure rack. All brochures across the state have consistent formatting and coloration, etc. And these have been a really great addition to the park and its visitors. Next slide. So in 2011, the New Jersey State Park Service Trails Committee identified the need to keep abreast of technology and new developments for trail navigation utilizing mobile devices such as cell phones. And the State Park Service set a goal of providing a mobile app as well, as others are doing the same effort. An initial partnership with an outside company presented too many challenges, so a couple years ago, the State Park Service decided to develop an app in-house. After researching the issue, the GIS staff identified ArcGIS Online, and all the data that I mentioned that had been collected over the years was uploaded into their web app builder to create their user-friendly trail navigation tool for use with mobile devices. As it says there at the bottom, the first version was launched in the fall of 2017. And data continues to be added and updated as needed. Ultimately, like the other tools that are being mentioned, it's a great interactive map. It's meant to help the public while in the park, as well as a planning tool to find a park or an activity. It's a searchable map app that you can search by address or place, summer, winter activities, any sort of activity, trail difficulty, a park or a activity that's nearest to the user, or like many apps, you can just kind of pan around and zoom and explore. So if you can go to the next slide, Sam, I'll do this is just a quick, about a 2-minute kind of recorded demo. Like I said, you can move and zoom in and out. All the State Park Service data that was collected has been overlaid onto existing map features. So the map itself includes towns, cities, roads, county boundaries, bodies of water. And as you zoom in close enough, you can see the park, the names, boundaries, and the trail lines in the colors there. You can zoom back out there. Like I mentioned, you can search by various other attributes and filter. You can search by activity. A variety of common activities are listed. When you click on one, I think in this case, camping. It'll pop up a linear list of all parks where that takes place. And then you can see the map is highlighted and filtered by locations that have indicated camping in their location. As you zoom in closer, you can get to see specific trails. Again, I'm going back to a layer. I mentioned you can filter by difficulty. So all the trails appear, and then you can toggle on and off if you are looking for a challenging hike or an easy hike. It really depends on the user's interest and needs. Over in that left-hand side, like I mentioned, a user can specifically type in a location, in this case Belle Plaine. In the south of the state, takes you to that park unit. Some basic information appears. And then as you move around the park, any of the overlay features are interactive. So you can click on the trail itself. Provides basic information, again, blaze, color, distance, difficulty, types of allowable use. The other features, in this case, a campsite, pops up. It can give you coordinates. Parking lot will also pop up with another link to a Google Map. So we're all familiar with Google Maps. You can find directions to that point of interest. So like any mapping tool, I mean, it just takes, it's pretty intuitive, straightforward. A lot of information there. We hope it is usable and user-friendly. I believe it is. We've gotten some good feedback, and it's always a work in progress, as is any mapping application. So that's it for me. I will also then hand it back to Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now, just to give you a little background on the organization I work for, the East Coast Greenway, for those that don't know. As I said at the beginning, the East Coast Greenway is a walking and biking route stretching 3,000 miles from Maine to Florida, connecting our nation's most popular corridor. Next slide. And so the Greenway is designed to transform, next slide, please. Transform the 15 states and 450 communities it connects through active and healthy lifestyles. Next. Sustainable transportation, community engagement, climate resilience, tourism, and more. The online mapping tool is found at map.greenway.org, and it allows users to navigate their journey from beginning to end using physical cue sheets or downloading a file to a device such as a Garmin. If you could flip a couple more. And here, if you could start the video, please. So if you go to map.greenway.org, this is the interface that you'll find, and you'll be able to see the entire Greenway as it is, and then see what sections are on road, separate trail, unpaved trail, and then portions that aren't physically connected, but you can travel through public transit or ferry. So you can input your starting point, as I did here in the video at Liberty State Park. You can get directions to the Greenway using Google Maps, or you just start from that point and then enter your ending desired location. And you can use that location there. And then it'll give you a route to follow. It tells you the distance in miles, your height, elevation. You can download cue sheets to print, step-by-step instructions. You can also copy the URL to input elsewhere. And you can also download the information to a Garmin or another device like Ride with GPS. So this is what the cue sheets would look like if you were printing them, and you can either have it digitally on your phone. It's very mobile friendly, or you can print it out the old fashioned way. As Brandee was saying, paper is always good to have as a backup. You can zoom in to see the surrounding area. The red dots that you see on the map there, we put in different regions as alerts. So as you know, we had our Hurricane Ida. And so I put specific alerts along the DNR Canal Trail, noting that it's probably not a best idea to travel there. You might want to find an alternate route, or if a section is closed for construction. We also update the state pages. So for me, the New York and New Jersey state pages, I'll be updating regularly with new information if there's long-term construction, so people can be aware of that as they're making plans. Okay, next slide, please. And just quickly wrap up, the East Coast Greenway is more than a trail. You can use it for active, equitable transportation for all modes. It's basically a gym, it's free, public access. We don't own any portions of the trail, but we do want to make sure that it is stewarded properly. It's a community center. You meet people from all walks of life. Great for local tourism and economic development. More importantly, it's a park, so everyone can go out there and see the surroundings and get some environmental stewardship. And because it is vital infrastructure, and we want it to address climate change and be that stopgap so our communities can be preserved, and that needs to be addressed through policy changes to accelerate Greenway construction. And one way you can do it is Greenway stimulus, investment dollars toward capital projects, programs, and jobs to support these efforts. These are some of the ways you can support Greenway expansion in your local community. You can attend a local ride. Next slide. We just had the New York City to Philly ride, our inaugural ride in August from Liberty State Park to Philadelphia. 2 days, 125 miles, raised over $300,000. We're going to be doing it again in May of 2022, and the sign up opens up next month. Next slide. There's a few ways you can follow us. Next. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or you can also do info@greenway.org if you have general questions. Okay. So now we're going to be moving on to our Q&A. We got a couple questions I see people are answering here in the Q&A box, but we did get some questions earlier before the session began. One of the interesting ones was, is there a list of accessible trails usable by people with disabilities, including trail location, length, challenge level, surface material, and accessible signage?
So I could start off answering this question. So as I mentioned, our schema does include a place to record whether a trail is ADA compliant, and it also has a space for basic trail surface information, as well as trail length and trail location. But as I also mentioned, all of this type of data might not yet be fully captured by our data providers, and so may not be complete for every trail that is included. We do hope that over time, data providers will begin to capture and submit this kind of data if they're not already doing so.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that as well. Some of the funding that the State Park Service utilized early in my time was to gather additional data for OPDMD, other power-driven mobility devices. So like I mentioned, when I was out walking numerous miles of trail, I was collecting data as well on OPDMD. And specifically what that meant was, the state of New Jersey has classified OPDMD by width and weight. So someone might use, instead of a standard wheelchair, they might use a Segway or they might use a golf cart. So specifically, the data that I was gathering was when something changed in a certain trail condition. If we were on a 8-foot wide paved trail, and then for whatever reason it changed to 3 feet wide and gravel, and then further along changed to single track with a stone staircase, right? So that changed the conditions of what mobility device someone would be, safely able to navigate. So that data set has been collected for pretty much every trail in the state parks and forests, so that's the good news. The challenge is yet still trying to figure out how to best represent that in a user-friendly way, so that the public, who, ultimately it comes down to their usability. So if someone wanted to call Delaware State Park and say, can I use my, golf cart on the White Trail? We need to have a reliable response to them, and it can't be arbitrary. It can't be because we don't, it needs to be based on either environmental criteria, or it's a culturally sensitive area, or it's, only 1 foot wide, et cetera. So yeah, the good news is that a lot of the data, at least for state parks and forests, is available. We're still working on how to best roll that out.
And the last thing I would mention is, of the two maps that I presented, one was of the circuit trails. The circuit trails are generally paved or hard packed surface, and generally about 10 feet wide. That's the standard they're meant to meet, to sort of serve as the spines of this active transportation network. And therefore, they tend to be more ADA compliant than perhaps some other trails. And any trail that's built with federal funding, particularly federal transportation funding, also needs to meet ADA compliance. Just a small piece of additional information.
Looks like we have a pretty good question, kind of a hot topic with electronic vehicles. E-options are now, this is from Jim Hunt, will be a growing trail challenge. Given these Herculean efforts, and much appreciated, is it not time now to add the e-permissions restrictions as a request?
I mean, I'll jump in with sort of a bit of a non-answer, but maybe one that leads in a particular direction. Both the circuit trails and the all trails inventory that we're doing obviously encompass two different states, a variety of different trail situations, from those that are maintained state by state agencies, or by local agencies, or even in some cases by nonprofits. Some of those rules are obviously set by regulations, but others may not be, particularly in the case of nonprofit controlled trails. So best advice I can give is, touch base with the trail manager now. It's not something that we currently have in the data set. It may be something we consider adding in the future, but it's not in there right now.
Yeah, I would second that for the statewide trails data layer. Obviously, it's not yet something that we're capturing information about, but it's possible that we, might be able to do that in the future.
Sorry about that. Okay. It looks like we are getting short on time, but I want to thank everyone for their questions, and a big thank you to the excellent panelists today. The information that you have shared with us is quite invaluable, and I'm sure many folks are going to appreciate that and use that in their learning about trails in their daily work if they're already in that line of work. I learned a lot, and as a reminder, all the sessions are recorded and will be available post-summit on the New Jersey njtrailsaction.org website. If we did not have time to get to your question, please see the handouts on the session page on the Summit website for information about how to directly follow up with the panelists. When the session ends, you'll be prompted to take a short feedback survey. We appreciate you taking the time to fill it out and look forward to your responses. And please don't forget to join the New Jersey Trails Action Network. We're going to take a short break, but please join us at our next session, Trails, Transit, and Complete Streets at 11:30.